Imagine if the world's most famous forensic scientist,
Right.
like the person who basically invented the modern crime scene, taught cops how to analyze footprints, all of that.
Right. The ultimate logic guy.
Exactly. Imagine if that guy was caught sitting in a dimly lit room paying a known con artist to, speak to ghosts.
You'd think it was a joke.
We're like a sting operation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you simply wouldn't expect the champion of cold clinical logic to just abandon empirical evidence for a séance.
But in the 1920s, that is exactly what the creator of Sherlock Holmes was doing.
It's wild. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle built this massive global literary empire on the infallible logic of his great detective.
Yeah.
Yet his own life became, well, entirely consumed by the irrational, the unseen, the occult.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today we're taking you on a journey through the esoteric life of Conan Doyle.
We are. It's such a fascinating evolution.
We're unpacking this bizarre shift from, a gothic horror entertainer who used ghosts to just sell magazines to a spiritualist evangelist who literally wanted to save the world.
It really is a brilliant look at what happens when a rigorous medical mind collides with the profound human need for comfort.
It's a huge paradox, and
Right.
we're looking at a trained practicing physician who later in life actually considered Sherlock Holmes a distraction.
Right, like a youthful folly.
Yeah, a distraction from his true calling, which was proving the afterlife was a scientifically measurable reality.
It is a total masterclass in cognitive dissonance.
For sure, and that level of cognitive dissonance, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Now builds.
Right. To see how a medical doctor abandons empirical evidence, you have to look at the circles he was running in. He was deliberately surrounding himself with an organization called the Ghost Club.
The Ghost Club, yeah, which was one of the oldest paranormal research organizations in the world, right there in London.
And he wasn't just a casual attendee, right?
Oh no. Doyle was a prominent, very vocal member. You have to understand, the intellectual landscape of Victorian and Edwardian England was deeply fractured on this stuff.
How so?
Well, you had the Ghost Club on one side, and then the Society for Psychical Research, or the SPR, on the other.
Right, the SPR. They were the rigorous academic wing of paranormal investigation.
Exactly. They were the ones attempting to actually apply the scientific method to the supernatural.
Like trying to debunk charlatans.
Yeah, exposing parlor tricks. But Doyle actually resigned from the SPR in protest.
Wait, in protest, just because they were asking logical questions?
Pretty much. He felt their aggressive skepticism was ruining the delicate conditions required for spirits to manifest.
That's so convenient.
It really is. His
Yeah.
departure from the SPR is, like, the first major indicator that his scientific training was taking a backseat.
To his emotional desire.
Exactly. The SPR was looking for objective truth, however disappointing that truth might be.
Whereas the Ghost Club was more of a safe haven.
A total echo chamber. It was focused on shared experience and validation, not rigorous testing.
Which brings us to the trial of the mediums. This is where his mental gymnastics really start to look like an Olympic sport.
Oh, the mental gymnastics are incredible here.
Doyle would actively defend mediums who were caught red-handed in undeniable fraud.
Caught completely in the act.
Right. If a medium was caught, hiding cheesecloth to fake ectoplasm, Doyle's reasoning wasn't, oh, this person is a con artist.
No, his reasoning was that true spirits sometimes resorted to trickery when their actual powers temporarily failed.
Come on. That's like a world-renowned forensic scientist ignoring clear DNA evidence just because they have a gut feeling the suspect is innocent.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
He actually argued that the pressure to perform for an audience drained the medium's genuine psychic energy.
So they had to cheat just to give the audience what they paid for.
Exactly. It was this incredibly convoluted defense mechanism, all designed to protect his core belief at all costs.
It flies in the face of everything his famous detective stood for.
Completely.
If Sherlock Holmes caught a suspect planting fake evidence, he wouldn't say, well, they're probably still innocent, their alibi just fell through. He'd lock them up.
He absolutely would. But Doyle wasn't looking for objective truth in those moments.
He was looking for confirmation.
Right, confirmation of his deeply held hopes. He needed the supernatural to be real so badly that he was willing to bend empirical reality.
Just to make room for it. It's that profound will to believe.
Yes. But to understand the full arc of his life, you have to realize that he wasn't always treating the supernatural as this sacred truth.
Right, before it became a religion for him, the occult was just a brilliant way to entertain readers.
And make a lot of money.
Yeah, this is his early to mid-career, which literary historians usually call his gothic horror period.
1880s and 90s.
Exactly. His primary goal was to thrill and chill readers of popular Victorian magazines like The Strand.
He was the ultimate entertainer in this space. He treated the supernatural as the uncanny.
It wasn't comforting at all.
Not even a little. It was a dark, atmospheric tool used specifically to generate suspense and dread.
His influence on modern horror tropes during this period is actually staggering. He basically laid the groundwork for weird fiction.
Oh, for sure. If you look at his 1883 story, The Captain of the Pole Star.
Such a good one.
Right. He crafts this haunting maritime tale about a ghost out in the desolate Arctic ice.
The supernatural element there is an unknown, terrifying force born of isolation.
And then there's The Ring of Thoth from 1890. That one dives heavily into immortality, alchemy, Egyptian mysticism.
It predates so many of the tropes we see in modern cinema, but I think the real game changer is a story from 1892 called Lot Number 249.
Oh, absolutely. With that single story, Doyle basically pioneered the mummy's curse subgenre.
He took the creeping dread of ancient Egypt and dropped it straight into a modern Oxford University dorm room.
It's brilliant. He introduced the concept of a reanimated, malevolent mummy being controlled and used for modern revenge.
Which is wild because before Doyle, mummies in literature were mostly just romanticized historical artifacts.
Yeah, he turned them into active, terrifying monsters.
He was incredibly prolific with this stuff, too. He published entire short story collections centered on horror.
Like tales of terror and mystery.
Yes, and tales of Twilight and the unseen. There is even a story from 1900 called Playing with Fire, which is literally a fictionalization of a séance gone terribly wrong.
Where they inadvertently summon a bizarre, unicorn-like entity that wreaks havoc.
So at this point, with all this output, was he just cashing in on Victorian trends, or was he already a true believer testing the waters?
It's a great question. While he did have a lingering curiosity since the 1880s, these early stories really treat the occult as a source of fear.
So he was cashing in?
Mostly, yeah. The monsters were unknown, terrifying forces. It was an intellectual exercise in creating suspense.
Okay, so how does a master of suspense, who uses ghosts to scare people, suddenly decide that ghosts are actually our friends?
That pivot requires a world-shattering tragedy.
World War I.
Exactly. The staggering, industrialized slaughter of the First World War fundamentally broke the global psyche.
But for Doyle, it wasn't just abstract horror. It collapsed into acute, devastating personal grief.
The loss of his son, Kingsley.
Right. Kingsley died from pneumonia shortly after being seriously wounded in the trenches.
And when you experience that level of sudden, incomprehensible loss, you look for answers.
But conventional medical science, the very discipline Doyle dedicated his life to it, offered no comfort.
It just offered a clinical explanation for Kingsley's failing lungs.
Which isn't enough.
No. The psychological weight of that grief demanded an answer that a stethoscope couldn't provide. So Doyle turned entirely to spiritualism.
And he didn't just casually adopt it as a hobby, did he?
Not at all. He let it entirely consume his identity. He began to see it as a universal religion.
A totalizing mission to heal a traumatized world.
The shift is so extreme. By the 1920s, he viewed Sherlock Holmes as a folly of his youth.
Wait, really? The character that brought him wealth and global fame?
Reduced to a parlor trick in his mind. He believed his true calling, his ultimate purpose on Earth, was to be a missionary of spirit.
He literally walked away from his life as a fiction writer to become a full-time evangelist.
He spent his vast personal fortune on what historians call dark tourism.
Traveling the globe.
Yeah. Across the U.S., Australia, Europe. Not to promote his novels, but to lecture massive audiences on the empirical reality of the afterlife.
And he wrote the foundational texts for the movement, too. In 1918, right in the thick of his grief, he published The New Revelation.
Explaining how his personal losses solidified his commitment.
Right. And then he wrote a dense 2-volume text in 1926 called The History of Spiritualism.
His Bible of the movement.
Exactly. But here's what I find fascinating. He was a trained medical doctor. How does he reconcile medical science with séances?
Well, he never actually stopped being a doctor in his own mind.
Yeah.
He just rebranded his medicine.
You branded it.
Yeah, through this concept of the science of the soul. Doyle couldn't simply abandon his rigorous scientific mind, so he repurposed it.
trying to categorize the supernatural scientifically.
Exactly. He didn't want the afterlife to be magic or faith.
Yeah.
He wanted it to be physics that humanity just hadn't mapped out yet.
Ah, so that explains his obsession with the physical mechanics of a séance.
Right. He wasn't talking about ghosts floating through walls.
He was talking about ectoplasm.
Treating it as a literal biological emission from the medium's body.
Wow. And he explains spiritual presence as different vibrations, right?
Yes, vibrations. He hypothesized that the soul operated on a vibrational frequency that human eyes and ears simply couldn't perceive.
Like ultraviolet light or high-frequency sound.
Exactly. If a ghost is just a person existing on a different thermodynamic frequency, then death isn't a terrifying abyss.
It's just a change in state.
He needed that empirical, pseudoscientific framing to make his belief palatable.
But I mean, think about what this absolute certainty does to his art.
It ruined it.
Yeah, it didn't just drain his bank account on these massive world tours. It fundamentally broke his ability to write a good, scary story.
The literary cost was incredibly steep. In his early Gothic tales, a ghost was a terrifying, unpredictable force of nature.
It represented the unknown.
But in his later writing, the supernatural became entirely domesticated.
Because he started to believe spirits were just people existing in a different vibration.
Right. They stopped being mysterious entities and started acting like slightly transparent, highly talkative neighbors.
You can't write chilling horror when you honestly believe the monster in the shadows is actually just a benevolent spirit sending you love.
The tension vanishes.
Yeah.
The scare is gone. And that loss of tension bled directly into a shift toward pure propaganda.
Like his later fiction, particularly the novel The Land of Mist.
Oh, that one completely abandons plot and character development.
The characters simply serve as mouthpieces for spiritualist theory. Fiction was no longer an escape, it was just an extension of his dogma.
And when you want something to be true that badly, your critical faculties just shut down.
You become vulnerable.
Incredibly vulnerable to deception. The most famous example of this is his involvement with the Cottingley fairies in 1922.
Oh, man. For those listening who might not be familiar, two young girls in Yorkshire took photographs of themselves in a garden surrounded by what looked like little dancing fairies.
Right.
And today, with our modern eyes, you look at these photos and they are very clearly paper cutouts from a children's book.
Propped up with hat pins. It's obvious.
But Doyle fiercely defended them as absolute, undeniable proof of supernatural life.
He staked his international reputation on paper cutouts. He even wrote a book about it, The Coming of the Fairies.
Why would a brilliant man fall for a child's prank?
Because the existence of fairies perfectly aligned with his desperate desire for a magical, multi-layered world.
He saw the innocence of the girls as proof that they couldn't possibly be capable of fraud.
Completely ignoring the physical evidence of the photographs themselves. His need for the world to be enchanted just overrode his common sense.
Which perfectly sets the stage for one of the most fascinating conflicts of his entire life, the Great Schism.
Ah, yes. His friendship turned rivalry with Harry Houdini.
This dynamic is almost too perfect for a novel. Think about the irony here. You have Harry Houdini, a stage illusionist who makes a living literally deceiving people.
Right.
Traveling the world desperately trying to debunk the supernatural.
Because Houdini understood the mechanics of deception better than anyone alive. He built those mechanics every night on stage.
Exactly. And he is acting as the arch nemesis to the creator of Sherlock Holmes, a trained medical doctor who is traveling the world desperately trying to prove magic is real.
It is completely upside down.
It really is.
And the tragic part is Houdini actually wanted to believe in the afterlife. He was incredibly close to his mother and was devastated by her death.
So he attended séances hoping for genuine contact.
Yes, but his vast knowledge of trickery demanded a level of proof he never found. He could spot a fake medium in seconds.
Because they were using the exact same sleight of hand techniques he used in his act.
Exactly. Doyle, on the other hand, only knew the mechanics of the human body.
Yeah.
He didn't understand stage magic.
So when he saw a table levitate, his medical brain assumed it had to be a new law of physics.
An unseen force rather than a hidden wire.
The clash between these two men perfectly encapsulates the whole theme here. The tension between the desire for empirical truth and the desperate emotional need for comfort.
Houdini's skepticism felt like a personal attack on Doyle's entire worldview.
The worldview that was keeping his son alive in his mind.
Yeah, the friendship just couldn't survive that fundamental incompatibility.
As we pull all these threads together, the incredible irony of Doyle's legacy becomes so clear.
It really does.
Historically, his early Gothic horror fiction, the stories he just wrote to thrill readers and pay the bills, those remain deeply influential.
The mummy's curse, the ancient occult rituals, we still see those everywhere in modern pop culture.
Yet his earnest, late-stage spiritualist manifestos, the texts he poured his fortune and soul into, are largely forgotten.
For works he firmly believed would save humanity from the trauma of the 20th century.
Just artifacts for literary historians now.
Think about how you react when someone challenges your deepest beliefs, especially the ones tied to a difficult time in your life.
Right.
We live in an era of absolute information overload. You have access to every fact, every statistic, every debunking video at your fingertips.
But how often do our own emotional needs dictate which of those facts we actually choose to accept?
It's an incredibly human tendency. We all have our own versions of the Cottingley fairies.
Things we accept without critical scrutiny because they bring us a sense of order.
In an otherwise chaotic world, Doyle's journey isn't a story of a genius losing his mind. It's a story of a father trying to survive his own humanity.
That's beautifully put. And it leaves me with one final thought to mull over. We always assume Sherlock Holmes was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's greatest creation.
It's synonymous with his name.
But considering the intense, scientifically categorized, and fiercely defended spiritual reality he built from scratch to survive the trauma of World War I, what if Doyle's true masterpiece wasn't a fictional detective at all? What if his ultimate masterpiece was the elaborate, intricate universe of the afterlife he constructed just to keep his son alive in his mind?